Star Wars. It's arguably one of the most influential franchises in history, having inspired countless creators from filmmakers to writers. And in the realm of video games, few franchises can claim to have more output than Star Wars. Spanning its entire lifetime, Star Wars has seen games on nearly every machine and console, and in terms of acclaim, they run the gamut of the highest highs and the lowest lows. But somewhere in the middle lies a game that, if you asked anyone who played it during its release year of 2008, would say it's on the higher end. So nearly everyone is surprised to learn that The Force Unleashed is regarded as ultimately mid on Metacritic. Is that where the game truly belongs? Or, like The Force, is there something beneath the surface waiting to be unleashed? The Force Unleashed is an action-adventure game set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. By now, the 20 years between these movies have been thoroughly explored, but back in 2008, this was prime real estate for creators. I should note that this was also a time where the Star Wars canon was a bit more fluid. For example, this game has a character that has died 4 separate times in the canon. Like I said, this was a time of playing things fast and loose with the story. George Lucas would offer some insight and basically go, yeah, that's cool. But it also goes to show how much he wanted to give new creators the freedom to make their mark on this universe. It's how you get masterpieces like Heir to the Empire and the Darth Plagueis book. Regarding The Force Unleashed, a lot of time was spent deciding what this game should be. A third entry in the Knights of the Old Republic series, a bounty hunter game. Eventually, they decided to follow the idea of kicking someone's ass with the Force. This involved using a version of the Force that was much more high-powered than what the movies depicted at the time. They put together a linear slice of the game, showed it to George Lucas, and he said, go make that game. The Force Unleashed consists of different technologies to make the Force feel more amped up than ever before. For example, the Havoc physics engine was used for making body physics possible, while the Digital Molecular Matter engine, or DMM, was responsible for making objects dynamically destructible. When you combine all these factors, you get a very intense experience, especially since this was supposed to run on the Xbox 360 and PS3. What you may not know is that during this generation of gaming, the 360 and PS3 were very different from one another in terms of building games. The PS3 was notoriously difficult to make games on until later in its life. The other wrinkle was that the game had to be released on the Nintendo Wii and the PlayStation 2. The Wii was not as strong as its contemporaries, and the PS2 was from the previous generation of consoles. Because of these limitations, many aspects of the game had to be changed, cut back, or removed entirely. To make things easier, I will be discussing the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. Just know that LucasArts had their hands full while developing this game. With all the difficulties I mentioned, you're probably asking, how did the game run? And I have to tell you, on the Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, great. Like Batman and Overlord, Force Unleashed runs great with very few problems on the PC. But even when it came out on consoles, there were very few complaints about performance. And to top it all off, you could play on modern consoles too. It's one of those lucky games that got preserved really well. Force Unleashed was classified as an action-adventure hack-and-slash game. You'll be spending your time going through levels, defeating enemies, and leveling up your character to make your Force abilities even more intense. For example, you have Force Lightning, but you can also upgrade it so you can infuse your lightsaber with it and hit your enemies with combos. And that's just a taste of what you can do to really go all out with the Force. The boss fights are fun, but I'd argue the mini-bosses are even better. Fighting an ATST Walker allows you to use whatever Force abilities you want. Do you want to just throw stuff at it? Go for it. Do you want to shock it to death? Light it up. Do you want to do all of that at once? Nice. The boss fights are a bit more focused on lightsaber combat, and that brings me to a criticism I have about the game. The lightsaber combat is kind of underwhelming. When you're fighting another lightsaber wielder, you can sometimes lock sabers, but you're mostly just going to be hacking and slashing at them until they die. When you think of lightsaber combat, you think of the clashes, the sound effects, the sparks flying, but here it feels no different than if you were just using a regular sword. The cool lightsaber fights are usually reserved for cutscenes in the game. I just wish I could have participated. But speaking of cutscenes, I have to mention the strongest part of The Force Unleashed:
The story.
the game opens with Vader seeking a Jedi on the Wookiee homeworld. When he finds the Jedi and his son, Vader takes the son and trains him as a secret apprentice. Vader dubs him with the name Starkiller. Interestingly enough, Starkiller was Luke's surname in the original drafts of the first Star Wars movie. Starkiller is modeled after and voiced by Sam Witwer, and let me tell you, he is incredible. Starkiller is such a fun story to follow, and Sam brings his A game to the performance.
What is your will, my master?
In fact, he did so well that he's been reused again and again in Star Wars projects. He's been Darth Maul,
Kenobi!
the Emperor,
Lord Vader, have you dealt with the rebels in the Lothal system?
and the personification of the dark side.
What if I could show you the future?
Best of all, he's a huge fan. During a script meeting with Dave Filoni, who I'd call the apprentice of George Lucas, Sam managed to correct Dave about some lore. He knows his stuff. Also, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. It means a lot if you liked, subscribed, and left a comment down below. But back to the game, the story follows Starkiller as he makes his way through the galaxy hunting down the remaining Jedi. The game also features multiple endings based on whether you go with the light side or the dark side.
Which was the style at the time?
The light side ending goes into the next game, but the dark side ending? Oh boy, that's a wild ride. I don't like to spoil games since my primary goal is to have you, the viewer, give it a shot. But I will say, you should play the light side ending, then the dark side ending, and then jump into all the DLC, which is available for the game on all devices. It's a wild what-if story that is so much fun and follows the rule of cool. The modding community is alive here as well. They even have a patch that makes the game run even better on the PC. You're probably wondering why the game was rated so low, if it has all this cool stuff. Well, at the time, the game was hyped up to unbelievable heights, and it all started with this trailer. The game promised that you could really unleash the Force, so much so that you could drag Star Destroyers out of orbit. The game also hyped the technology I mentioned, and how realistic it was when things broke, or the AI reacted to being grabbed by the Force. But the game never really actually unleashed the Force to that degree. And most people, I'm sorry to say, don't really care how realistic it looks when a Force blast splinters a piece of wood. So, what happens when a game doesn't deliver the promise of its potential? It's very disappointing, and that can be seen in the reviews. Hype that the product doesn't live up to has been the undoing of different projects, like No Man's Sky, Duke Nukem Forever, or Aliens Colonial Marines. However, time has passed since those trailers released. Many Star Wars games, books, and movies have come and gone. So now we can ask with more objectivity, is The Force Unleashed worth your time and money? I would say absolutely. The story is fun, the Force is mind-blowing, and there's even outfits and lightsabers for you to unlock, and I strongly recommend the DLC. The game is $20 US and always goes on sale. If you're a Star Wars fan, the game is a blast, and it's worth your time to unleash the power of the Force. Within reason. In terms of what this game should be remembered most favorably for, giving the Star Wars community Sam Witwer. He loves this world as much as we do. He even streams live on Twitch. I'll put that link in the description below. Next time, though, we leave the familiar and light setting of Star Wars and venture down, 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 and follow the path of someone who dares to tread to the inferno.